Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third webinar of our LinguaTech Europe Academy. For those joining us for the first time, this is a Teacher Academy project led by DJ University in Turkey. And Rocío, if you can show about this project before we start. The objective of this teacher academy is to enhance language education in Europe by improving the competencies of both future teachers and in-service teachers through digital tools, inclusive practices, and multilingual pedagogies, what we have called DIMS. We have been developing some modules, some teacher materials, with this idea of trying to meet student needs in an evolving educational landscape. This project started a little bit more than a year ago, and it's for 36 months. As I said, is led by DG University. Although we are eight partner institutions from five countries, as you can see here on the screen. Institutions from Turkey, from Germany, from Portugal, Norway, and Spain. And considering these three key axes, digital tools, inclusive practices, and multilingual pedagogies, in this third webinar, we are going to work specifically with the topic of inclusion. So today we have the honor to welcome Rocío Luque from University of Córdoba, Universidad de Córdoba in Spain, and also Lisa Marie Brinkmann from the University of Hamburg in Germany. They will present, the key issues of this module on inclusion. And as we did in the previous webinar, there will be some, time for questions and answers and for, some comments so that you all can also participate. Regarding the questions about certificates, we sent by email the certificates of webinar 1. We are preparing the certificates for the second webinar, okay, for those attending live, okay. This is important for us. Although all webinars are recorded and uploaded onto YouTube, usually in the during the same week of the webinar. Okay, so I think that this is the general information before we start. So thank you, Rocío and Lisa, and the floor is yours.
So thank you very much, Cristina. Hello, everybody, and welcome again. As Professor Cristina Huerta said, my name is Rocío Luque-González, and together with my colleague Lisa Marie Brinkmann, we will present you over the next 45 to 60 minutes this module that we have developed as part of the LiTE Academy project. In this module, we will explore how linguistic diversity can be addressed, but not only linguistic diversity, but also diversity can be addressed in the language classroom, taking a reflective approach to the definition of inclusion and integration as our starting point. Drawing on your own teaching practice and by shifting our perspective, we will address a number of issues relating to the different personal, cultural, and linguistic background that our students bring to the classroom. So let me now show you the structure of today's session. This is our agenda for this webinar, and we will start with a theoretical foundation in which we will discuss why it's important to distinguish between certain concepts from a theoretical perspective. For example, are inclusion and integration the same thing? We will also introduce concepts such as intersectionality and the role that digital tools can play in inclusion, such as reducing barriers. Then we will move into the module that we have developed as part of this project, including a detailed look at the 5 units. We will combine theoretical and practical consideration, trying to give an answer to questions as how we do approach inclusion in our classroom, or how can we put into practice strategies that help improve inclusion in our classes. After that, we will open a feedback and reflection with open-ended questions that Lisa will present in order to help you to connect these ideas to your own classrooms and experiences. And finally, we will have the QA section that Christina mentioned, where you can ask anything about the module, the tools, or the theory that we are going to see. So let's move to the theory. The first thing we need to consider is this question: why do we talk about inclusion in the classroom? As teachers in our language classroom, we find a diverse branch of students, which means, on the one hand, varying level of proficiency. After all, do all our students have the same level of a language? Do they speak different languages? Where and how? Or do they have the same needs? But at the same time, this diversity also means the coexistence of different cultures, different life experiences, and different backgrounds. Therefore, our task as teachers is to find ways of combining all of these factors to help students develop not only their linguistic identity, but also their personal identity. Because of that, we have here 5 key points that remind us the need of improve our inclusion competencies as teachers. The first one is the inadequate preparation for inclusive teaching. Traditional teacher education often fails to adequately prepare educators for managing heterogeneous classrooms. Many teachers report a lack of confidence when working with students with disabilities, migrant backgrounds, or socioeconomic disadvantages. Other question is the demand for differentiated and responsive strategies. Inclusive education requires teachers to differentiate their instruction and adapt materials to meet a wide range of learning styles, linguistic abilities, or cognitive or physical needs. The importance of the classroom management in diverse settings means that teachers must be able to promote inclusive participation, build a safe learning environment, and effectively manage the dynamic of the diverse student groups. Other question is the role of digital tools in inclusion, because technology can serve as an equalizer, but only when teachers know how to use it strategically to reduce barriers, increase accessibility, and support student autonomy and expression. And finally, we have also the intersectionality as a core perspective. Inclusive teaching is not only one size fits all. We are all different, and also teachers must understand how overlapping identities, for example, gender, language, or linguistic identity, disability, and migration history, shape students. This experience and their participation in learning environments. In order to address some of these identified needs, and in line with the UNESCO Global Guidance on Multilingual Education, inclusive approaches must also ensure that learners' home language and also the diversity are recognized and valued as integral to their educational experience. But not only home languages, as we have seen in previous webinars, but also diversity, constituted by the intersection of race, social class, ethnicity, religion, gender, ability, and maybe other aspects. The guidance emphasizes that equitable access to learning requires culturally and linguistically responsive pedagogy, with teacher training to identify and reduce linguistic barriers that intersect with other forms of disadvantage. Also, the DigiComp Edu framework, focused on learner empowerment and accessibility, reinforce the need for inclusive digital design, especially for learners with special educational needs, migrant backgrounds, or limited digital access. Furthermore, the multiliteracy framework provides a pedagogical foundation for inclusive practices by encouraging educators to engage learners through situated practice over instruction critical framing, and transformed practice. All of these approaches support learners in making meaning through diverse linguistic, cultural, and multimodal resources, aligning with inclusive education emphasis on equity, identity, and access. Here we need to talk about the aims of the webinar and also of the module that we are presenting today. The first one is to build a comprehensive understanding of inclusion as a structural, contextual, and ethical practice. You distinguish concepts as diversity, inclusion, equity, recognize inclusion as a redesign of condition and system, and shift thinking from what is wrong with this learner to what conditions enable participation, contribution, and belonging for the same student. In a second place, we will try to develop critical, reflective, and evidence-based practice, and you will examine belief, positionality, and biases, apply critical needs analysis and ecological perspective, understand how power, law, and digital technologies shape inclusion, and translate into critical reflection into actionable, inclusive classroom and institutional change. And finally, you will be able to implement inclusive design across learning dimension, and you can apply the universal design for learning and other assessment formats, and be responsible and do a responsible use for digital tools. So this is what you can take from a theory section of this webinar. Before you leave today, you will not need to have every piece of information on your head, because we will share the recording. But also, you need to have in mind these questions. The first one is or can I consider my classroom as an inclusive environment? We need to have a plan to address the learning needs of students with disabilities from refugee backgrounds or with other educational disadvantages. The second question is, what kind of resources am I using in the classroom? Can I select and justify the use of a digital accessibility tool for an inclusive lesson? And the third one is my practice or my material and language use addressing or reproducing social inequities related to race, gender, language, and ability? Before answering these questions, it's important to consider how we can work with promote effective inclusion in the classroom, as even small details that we might overlook can sometimes be very useful. In the next part of the webinar, we will show you a teacher training module that put these three pillars into practice. Having seen the theoretical foundation of the webinar, this is the part in which we try to reflect or to show how these principles are translated to a teacher training module. This is the module on inclusive education learning that we have developed, and this module is designed to help participants learn how to create effective lesson plans that promote inclusion in language classroom by shifting our perspective and drawing on real-life classroom contexts and practices that suggest ways of designing inclusive teaching practices. The structure of the module, as you have seen also in the previous webinar, and probably you will see in the next that are coming, consists on 5 units. The overall content is the following. We have Unit 1, called Inclusion and Diversity in the Classroom. And in here, teachers are going to learn about differences and similarities between inclusion and integration, or about intersectionality, inviting them to build a foundational understanding of diversity in language education. Through an intersectional lens, teachers will learn to recognize the overlapping identities and social structures that shape how learners access and experience language learning, and to reflect on their pedagogical choices can either reinforce or dismantle barriers to belonging. Then, We have Unit 2, which is called Inclusion in Your Context, from Critical Reflection to Action, and presents one more step by moving from conceptual understanding to critical self-examination and contextual awareness. In this part, we will invite teachers to reflect on their own beliefs, positionality, and institutional conditions as a starting point for meaningful inclusive actions. Through need analysis, critical reflection, and policy mapping, participants will develop the tools to identify barriers to inclusion in their own context and to act on them in informed or sustainable ways. Then, Unit 3, called Redesign for Inclusion, from Adaptation to Design, provides an opportunity to move from critical awareness to concrete redesign. This unit invites teachers to examine and challenge the biases embedded in everyday pedagogical decisions, rethink assessment as an inclusive and equitable practice, and understand how classroom choices are shaped by broader institutional and societal conditions. The goal is to support teachers in moving from adaptation to intentional structural redesign that make inclusion a consistent feature on their teaching rather than an occasional response to an individual need. In Unit 4, called Digital and Multilingual Practices for Inclusion, the main idea is to examine digital technologies and multilingual practices through an inclusion-focused lens. Rather than treating technology as a neutral or universal solution, it invites participants to engage critically with how the digital tools, EA system, and language practices can either open up or limit participation, depending on how they are designed and also used. The unit explores language hierarchies, bias in AI-generated content, and unequal access to digital resources, while also offering practical strategies to support inclusive, multilingual participation across different learning environments. And finally, we will have Unit 5, which is Integration, Reflection, and Capitulation Project. And the idea is for teachers to work on a final project connecting all the ideas they have seen in Unit 1 to 4. And considering an ecological model of inclusive education, this unit requires alignment across 4 interconnected layers. In each unit, we will follow the same structure. So we will have 2 core points from a little bit more theoretical part that I will be presenting, and 1 third part, more practically, that Lisa will show us. So here is the general overview for the Unit 1 in this module. This unit, called Inclusion and Diversity in the Classroom, tries to answer basically this general question that you can see in the screen, which is, what does diversity mean in a classroom? Because we will find definitions to create or share a conceptual language for thinking about diversity and inclusion in language education. Rather than memorizing definition, the aim is to develop the habit of noticing diversity in a classroom, interpreting it accurately, and responding pedagogically rather than intuitively. This unit covers these 3 core topics. At first, the definition of diversity, which relates to different identities, competencies, and further aspects present in a given space and time. Another key concept as integration, that focus on how learners who are perceived as different are expected to adapt the dominant norm of language, behavior, and assessment within a system that remains largely unchanged. Inclusion, that refers to the adaptation of the system to the learners and vice versa. Assimilation, that assumes there is one legitimate way of doing and behaving, and that cultural differences should be eventually disappear, or the difference between equality and equity, that is a distinction that is central to an inclusive pedagogy idea. Then, on the second part of the module, introduce the concept of intersectionality by considering the shift focus to how aspects of identity do not exist in isolation, but overlap. The idea describes how our various social and personal identities, such as those tied to race, gender identity, class, disability, sexual orientation, migration, status, and age, overlap and intertwine, creating unique experiences of both advantage and disadvantages across different contexts, including educational and professional ones. In the language classroom, this means language is never the only relevant aspect of a student identity. A student can also be, or might also be, a racialized 15 years old who is the primary English translator for the immigrant family, navigating issues of multilingualism, immigration, and race. A student learning English while also living with a psychological or physical disability, or maybe an older refugee student with incomplete schooling who has been forced to leave their country due to a war, for instance. This aspect of a student identity intersect and shape how they access the curriculum, participate in class, and also experience the school community. Ignoring this interaction of the student multiple identity-related aspects and experiences can mean we only see part of a picture. And then we have pedagogical implication as a practical part. For this practical part into this module, as I said before, I will leave the floor to my colleague Lisa to explain what do the teacher do in this unit. And then I will continue with the same structure for the other modules.
Thank you, Rocío. Thank you for giving an overview of the general module and then of the first unit. As she was already explaining, I will focus on the practice of each unit and in the end of how we can bring it together in the question and answer section and the general discussion. So whenever you see a theme that is new to you, you might just write it down either in your notes or either or in the Q&A, and just to keep you to keep this understanding of when we think about inclusion, it's often about the blind spots. There are various aspects that we are aware of, and we can address them. But then there are various aspects that we are not aware of. And this is what really makes inclusion so interesting and also sometimes difficult. And that is why we have this module. So when we have an intersectional understanding and an understanding of diversity, the most important part in the practice is to come up with strategies for the classroom. So when you do inclusion, you can see on the right of the slide, when we do inclusion, it's not about excluding some students that were in the past labeled as different or sometimes are still labeled today as different. It's not about segregating them from the others that are labeled as normal, the green dots that you see in the image. And it's not about integrating them, but as a separate group where they are still perceived as different from the others. But inclusion is the understanding that you see on the right, where all the different colors and dots are meant to be as they are. So they're recognized the way they are, and diversity is the normality. Diversity is what makes the classroom or the specific space, what makes it inclusive. And in this Unit 1, in the practical part, we focus on four strategies that you can use to enhance inclusion in your classroom, which is curious observation. So as I was just saying about the blind spots that we might have, we can think about, or we can just start with observing, what do I have in my classroom? What is special here? What makes the colorful dots? And then this is one first approach to start an analysis of who is in front of me, who am I dealing with, who are the students that are my students. And then there's another kind of complementing strategy, which is universal design for learning, UDL. And this strategy describes that nobody has to reveal some disabilities or other aspects that might differ from the norm. So we respect every different aspects of diversity, and we address them beforehand. So when we design something, design a task or design assessment, anything we design, we do it from a universal perspective of learning in which different options are given. So including visual aspects and written aspects, including various forms of structure, but also forms that can distract you, so that it doesn't become boring for those who need it. This is the idea of universal design of learning. It might be a utopia to address all of them, but still it is a desire that we have and that can guide us to develop our classrooms inclusively. And then there's identity affirming routines, which refers to the different students that I have. I just affirm their identities. I give them the feeling that they are valid, they are okay, they are just in the right place, they are part of my classroom. And finally, collaborating proactively. This means that between teachers, between students, or student and teachers, we understand ourselves as a big group in which everybody can contribute to knowledge, to the knowledge foundations and to the knowledge construction. And we collaborate with each other because that's the best way in a diverse group to make the most of it. And I hand over back to you, Rocío.
Thank you, Lisa. Here we have Unit 2 called Inclusion in Your Context, from Critical Reflection to Action. This unit tries to answer basically the idea that you can see in the screen in form of a question. That is, why critical reflection matters? Well, it matters precisely because it helps teachers to make visible implicit beliefs and values that shape perception toward learners, their participation and achievement, and also because this critically question existing in habitual practices that are seldom examined within classroom in an institution, and finally, because recognize how power, representation, and access operate in everyday pedagogical decisions and practices. So, one of the ways to conduct this critical reflection, or at least the first step, should be a basic need analysis as a critical and reflective instrument for understanding how inclusion is enacted in our context and for whom it actually works. That means to have into account three basic and interconnected areas that are adaptation of the system rather than remediation of learners by identifying the conditions that enable or constrain learner participation, barriers created by everyday teaching practices, assessment formats, and institutional structures, and also opportunities for teacher agency, which is a prerequisite for meaningful and sustainable inclusive change. Not only we need to make this analysis, but also we need to consider an important question that can also influence in this kind of analysis, that are the teacher's beliefs, positionality, and also representativity, because teachers' beliefs are closely related to teaching practices, decision-making, and professional development. Beliefs are the different systems of often tacitly held theories, values, and assumptions that the teacher deems to be true and which serve as cognitive filters that interpret new experiences and guide the teacher's thoughts and behavior. It's very important because the connection between belief and identity leads us to the concept of positionality that has been defined as describing the position one occupies within socially constructed settings resulting from an intersectional identities and the unequal distribution of powers in society. From this perspective, Positionality refers both to the outcome of ongoing negotiation between identity, the other, and the surrounding social context, in our case, the class or maybe the school. Representativity is referred to be representative or certain social groups or not, and is a concept closer to the feeling to be present in the classroom, for instance. Positionality and representativity allows language teachers to reflect on how their own positioning informs their teaching and how representation or its absence may affect learners' sense of recognition and belonging in the classroom. So here we find again a more practical part into this unit. So Lisa, feel free to give us a practical perspective for this unit.
Okay, so for this unit, focusing on basic needs analysis and beliefs, positionality, what is necessary is to look through school and workplace policies and legal frameworks. Because whenever we want to implement something, we have to check that it fits the system with which we are working or within which we are working. So while it might not seem very practical, this is an approach that we have in general in this module on inclusion, because inclusion and diversity can mean so many things. And furthermore, in the different countries and contexts in which we interact, there might be things of diversity that are completely acknowledged and are sustained by the legal frameworks, and there might be other aspects that are not. So we are not able to give you a recipe how to implement a basic needs analysis and positionality in your classroom. Because the diversity of the settings is another aspect that enriches the general field within we are working. So what we propose to you is to look at the different levels, to look, and we will explain it in the next section again, to look at the macro level, to look at the bigger level, which is the legal frameworks. What is expected from me as a teacher? What are my possibilities and where are the limits? So to stay within the general limits, but also to explore the possibilities that you can have. We know that there are gaps between policy and practice. And these gaps, they grow when the macro system does not fully present what happens at the mesosystem and the micro level, so the levels embedded within the macro system. And another aspect to consider is are the institutional conditions. So what about the families? What about the parents? What about the society? How do all of them add to the diversity aspects with which we have to deal in the classroom? And so you see in the picture how a lot of top-down rules come into the classroom, but also how bottom-up realities can be enhanced through these different understandings of levels, and how getting back to the Unit 1, collaboration between teachers within the same school with a similar or the same context, collaborations within the same city, within the same state, within the same country, can lead us to really advance inclusion in our classrooms and further.
Okay. So we have here Unit 3 called Redesign for Inclusion, from Adaptation to Design, that try to give a look to the way to change our view as a teacher in order to design our spaces to be more inclusive. We need to consider the concept of the redesign of the pedagogy of multiliteracies that considers inclusion as a continuous process of identifying and removing barriers to learning, which implies a transformation of pedagogical practices, curricula, and institutional cultures. Redesign for inclusion shifts the focus from the student with difficulties to the way educational contexts are structured, recognizing that diversity is an inherent characteristic of any group of students. We will also take here about assessment, that is not a neutral process, but a social practice associated with power relations, cultural norms, and epistemological assumptions that can contribute to the accentuation of educational inequalities also. Continuous formative assessment provides a comprehensive picture of student performance by measuring their learning progress and informs teachers about the effectiveness of their teaching, allowing them to make adjustment to keep students on track toward learning goals. So, to give a practical look to this unit, Lisa is going to present the practice.
Okay, to put this in practice, and I was already talking about the macro, meso, and micro levels that we will explain further. We can link the classroom practices to school and to the social context. So the social context represent what is the broader framework within which we are acting. And it is important to have consistency between what is happening in society, in the families, and what is happening in the schools, in the classroom, in the language classroom. So what we want to offer you is an ecological perspective, because this perspective starts from, okay, there are different systems interacting with each other. And there are also persons interacting with each other. Every classroom is characterized by the different actors within it. And everybody has a role to play. Everybody can contribute to and make the classroom what it is. So the idea of an ecological perspective, you can think of it like a garden or like any ecological system in nature where everybody has a role to play. And if you take somebody or something out of it, then the ecological balance wouldn't be there anymore. So this ecological perspective allows us to think and to act in the classroom, integrating everybody, including everybody, and using the strength of different students, and the idea of constructing knowledge together, or doing actual projects, which would be very much related to the strategy of service learning. Which means that within a specific form, within a specific group that is institutionalized, we reach out to the communities that surround us. There's certain communities in our exo or macro systems, in our neighborhoods, in our families. And we try to give from the time and the knowledge that we have in our institutions, we use it to give something back to the community and to learn together with them and to operate together with them. So these are some ideas how to link the classroom practices to school and to the social context.
Thank you, Lisa. We have here Unit 4 called Digital and Multilingual Practices for Inclusion that examines digital technologies and multilingual practices through an inclusion-focused lens. The question here is how to engage critically with digital tools, because digital tools and multilingual teaching are often seen as a way to make education more fair and accessible. But while they can support inclusion, they can also reinforce existing inequalities. Digital platform, as I said before, AI tool and language practices are not neutral. How they are designed and used can either open up or limit who is able to participate, whose language is valued and whose knowledge counts. As I say at the beginning, when I presented the complete module, this unit looked at digital technologies because explore how language hierarchies and bias in AI system and access to the resources learners' experiences in both online and physical learning spaces is combined. Participants are encouraged to think critically about technology and EA-generated content, recognizing them as tools shaped by social and power relations rather than objective or universal solutions. Rather than treating technology as a neutral or universal solution, it invites participants to engage critically on how digital tools can be used. Now Lisa will continue by giving us the practical content of this unit.
Hey, we are approaching the end. So, to wrap it all together, what we have learned so far about inclusion, about diversity, about beliefs positionality, about adaptations and redesign, and finally about exclusion and inclusion in digital and AI contexts, we want to address linguistic inequalities in digital, but also in material environments, because we act and we live and we learn in these two environments. So we present how the digital and the material environments and contexts are connected. Because we could think of them as separated, but we know that there are many, many moments in which they are highly interconnected and in a hybrid become a hybrid environment. And we also want to offer practical strategies for inclusive multilingual participation at the classroom and at the institutional level, using AI, using digital means, in order to ensure inclusion. So when we think, I would like to give an example here from a colleague who learned in a professional development event about using live transcriptions. And when she had a discussion with parents who did not speak the same language as her, she put on the live transcriptions and she said what she had to say about the child, and it was all automatically translated. And the parents could answer in the language they both share, or they could also answer in their own language. And she, as the teacher, could understand better what they wanted her to know. Another idea that we can think of is when we have instructions and when we have assessment practices, to use digital tools to ensure inclusion, so that the final grade of a student or the grade for any kind of assessment does not only depend on the languages that she or he speaks, but that they depend on their active cognitive knowledge and their competence. So it is an idea to rethink all the digital possibilities that we have to ensure inclusion in our classrooms. And this will also be extended and expanded in the capstone project in the Unit 5, which will be presented in detail in another webinar. But just to tease you here and say that there's a lot to come in this direction. Okay, thank you, Rocío. And I think we filled 45 minutes with a lot of information. And now what is really important to us is to know what can you do, or what are you doing with this information? So we have prepared some questions for you. The first question is, what does inclusion mean to you? So it's a very broad question, but that was our aim. What does inclusion mean to you? You can also speak about your emotions, so everything is allowed: emotions, cognitions, associations, whatever you have, metaphors. We talked about the garden metaphor. So what is inclusion for you?
Lisa, I'm going to activate the chat so people can
Wonderful.
write. Okay, and of course, if somebody wants to put their hand up, of course they can also do it. I am doing this. Okay, so I guess now everybody can chat. Can you please check it? is yeah. Now according to this, everybody can do it. Can write. I think. Okay, well, in any case, we have some comments in the Q&A. For example, Miriam says that it's a challenge.
Of course.
And Cynthia says that for her, it's about not leaving anyone behind.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes, because it's a challenge. This is why we made a module for it. This is why we don't leave you alone. And it never stops being a challenge because we never stop learning about diversity. And yeah, we everybody who works with inclusion and does not think it's a challenge might not have understood the nature of inclusion.
Teresa has written in the chat that inclusion means literally means equity to me. And now, yeah, people can now write on the chat so you can check it.
Equity, of course. So the idea that it's not only about giving everybody the same tools, but to give everybody the tools that they need to get to the same output or to have the same opportunities. So leaving no one behind.
Yeah. Look at Nesri Bal answer. Inclusion is like a bowl of salad. It has many ingredients and you cannot separate one over another. All of them
Yes.
have a role as all students have different identities. I think that I really like this metaphor.
Absolutely. I also like that some of you are including feel welcome, the emotion of the well-being, feeling, and having a voice, being heard. These are very important aspects. Respect, acceptance. This is what we need as humans in society and as social beings. We need respect and acceptance. A very differentiated comment is about the neurodivergent students. So the students with what was formerly labeled as cognitive disabilities. And now we moved the framework towards, okay, everybody has different cognitive abilities. So let's not call it disability and ability, but it's a neurodiversity. And there are neurotypical students and there are neurodivergent students. There are neurotypical persons, neurodivergent students. And to learn about their triggers and their motivations so that learning for those for which it might be more difficult becomes easier. The idea of equity, I do what you need so that we all have the same opportunities. And we're getting back to the emotions too, well-being, sense of belonging, valuing, looking at the needs.
And for example, Suleiman Yilmaz, sorry for my Turkish, I said that in a previous webinar. They say for the students who have different backgrounds, common way should be found. I guess the technology is the only solution, especially virtual reality is very good in this way. I'm constantly using it and it's very beneficial.
Mhm.
And also neuroinclusion is our reality, says Vanessa Rayleigh,
Mhm.
or creating environments where everyone has equal access and feels valued. And also including diversity and functioning, altogether removing any kind of barriers.
Mhm. Yes, because we have a lot of barriers, which makes the challenge.
Yeah.
So what we see in the chat here and in your comments is that there are diverse understandings of inclusion, and that is also important. And it is important that you and yourself, with your beliefs, come to a differentiated understanding of what inclusion means in your specific context. So when there is a lot of virtual reality and a lot of technology that everybody in your classroom has access to and that you yourself have access to, it is the first thing, the direct, the automatic way to do it. If you are in other contexts where you might not have all your students with internet access or with digital devices, there are other ways of inclusion. So it really depends on the context that you are in. And I like the diversity of context that comes together in the chat. And in the end, it's all about understanding our students, as Vanessa Riley is saying. And to look back at how we might have felt excluded. So this is a very valuable comment because we can learn best from our own experiences. They are kind of ingrained in our understanding, and they have an impact on how we react in situations that we did not expect. So whenever we are confronted with a situation where we don't have a direct answer to, we usually draw on our experiences. And if we find a way to structure our experiences and to not only look at the good sides, but also at the not so good moments that we have, to use it as a learning effect and to use it to stop exclusion, to stop exclusion from happening. Okay, that was maybe a very nice word to cut and to go on to the next reflection. And because inclusion is a challenge, we are very interested in what are your blind spots in inclusive teaching and diversity. And maybe have you approached them? Have you approached inclusion so far? Do you have the practice examples for others' blind spots? So I can maybe start and go ahead with one of mine. It's about religious diversity. And this comes from a context from Germany. We lack this focus on religion. We have a lot of examples, and we have advanced in understandings of racism, of gender equality, and of disability studies. But religion is really something that is not very expressed in the legal frameworks and not in the practices that I have been in touch so far in the German educational language education context. So if you have any approaches, any good practice examples for me, please go ahead and also share what are your blind spots? What can you admit? I have to learn more about it so that I can be an inclusive teacher.
Again, you can use the chat, and if somebody feels like speaking, please put your hand up, and we will give you the possibility of speaking using your voice.
Consuming access and limited resources. Yes, that's a challenge. When we have limited resources, we are limited on the macro level, and however, there are always ways to ensure belonging and emotional well-being, apart from limited resources. But maybe others have insights on how to act in contexts of limited resources. Different religious celebrations. Yes, we cannot know all of them, but it's a good way. And I cite Marta for other students to know the others. So maybe there are strategies of building a calendar, an interreligious calendar, where everybody can note their ideas of everybody can note the celebrations that they have. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I think that this is the idea of the webinar, that we can build knowledge and ideas together. So yeah.
Yes, individual needs versus group needs. Because as teachers, we often talk about the group, the class, the classroom, and there's a diversity within the group, and there are individual needs. So there are some strategies that can be used, individualization strategies, and something that I have used in the past are portfolios. So that it's a lot of work for the teacher, but you have really an individualization through it, because when you use portfolios in which the students document all of their learning, and then you as a teacher go through them, you see the learner itself individually, and not as, okay, he or she fulfilled this and that task, and now I compare all the tasks. No, I see, okay, that student started at this point, and now over the last 3 weeks, the student has evolved, and I can see an evolution, and I can see the strength and other weaknesses. The experiences from students from non-Eurocentric cultures, absolutely, because we have a domination of the European values, the European knowledge system, and it is everywhere. So there's definitely a need for integrating these experiences, the voices of these students, in the classroom, but also in the teaching materials that we have. Yeah, and of course the macro system, which defines the number of students per class, and the policies and regulations in schools. That's something that we cannot address directly or cannot change directly in our classroom. It's something that we have to adapt and find a way to deal with it in our individual context. Okay, where can we learn about inclusive teaching methodologies? If it's not offered in your own country, it is offered in European projects like the LiTE Academy. So thank you for being here, Brandon Gear, because you start, and then you can contribute, you can collaborate with the colleagues in your country.
Yeah, and I will talk about this later, but these webinars are preliminary dissemination events. But the modules that both Rocío and Lisa have been presenting are almost ready on the platform. So when we finish, we will write in the chat the link to the website so you can join the waiting list. And once everything is technically ready, you will have access to the modules, and you will be able to follow the different like theoretical materials, and also the different tasks, forum, and so, because that's the purpose of this. That's with this webinar we try to spark the interest in the modules, in the projects, that you know a little bit, of course, about inclusion. But as they said before, in 45 minutes, in an hour, it is not possible to assimilate everything. So we have this general overview, okay, and the idea is that after that you can join this waiting list, and when the modules are on the platform, you can enter, you can check the materials, and of course, as we also said, all the recordings, all the webinars are recorded, and all the recordings are available on YouTube. Okay, so you can also check them later, or share it with your colleagues, other people that can be interested in this, or that can be not only interested, but also that may have the need for this type of training. So that's the idea, that everything is open access, public, free, so you can join. Okay.
Great. There's still coming in some answers in the chat and in the Q&A as well about neurodivergent best practices or good practices that we can adapt, and about speaking with the students, so that the students become the experts on their identity, belonging, and exclusion. And this might be something that works for a lot of aspects of diversity, and then there are other aspects in which we would need a more sensible, an approach that would allow not to have somebody feeling bad about any aspect. For example, in the chat, socioeconomic background was mentioned. So of course, a student which is affected by poverty does not want to have it seen or discussed publicly. So in these moments, what we can do is to check our teaching materials and our own discourse that we use, so that no student has to have the feeling I'm not rich enough to be here, or I'm not good enough to be here. And to find ways when any kind of discrimination happens, that we as teachers are brave enough to say, okay, in general, this is not this is not okay. And we don't have to ask anybody personally what about exclusion or discrimination, but discrimination is never okay. And to explain in very general terms why it is not okay without pointing at somebody, and also without pointing to the person who might have been exclusive or discriminating, because sometimes it's so ingrained in our brains, and it comes from society, and everybody needs a moment to learn it. And when you have course books who do not include inclusion, it is about the interaction in the classroom. It is about talking to the students, and and also finding ways of how to deal with shy students. So maybe there are anonymous strategies that you can use, or a written task in which they don't have to speak out loud. Oh, this is so rich with everything that's in the chat. I have the feeling that I cannot do justice to all of it. But in the end, the idea of our module is that you start reflecting, and because we will have forum discussions related to the modules, there will always be collaborative support. So all these questions that you have, don't forget them. Try to answer them through the module, and then bring them with you to the forums in which we will have further discussions. Mhm. Projects, short activities, flexible assessment.
Yeah, there are also some comments about textbooks
Mhm.
regarding material activities that we can use in order to integrate all the students.
Mhm.
Yeah, it may be a project or just a short activity. So textbooks are also interesting resources, although in some
Mhm.
cases can be somehow limited. So, but another resource to be used in a classroom.
Mhm.
So here we have a question in the Q&As that is Filomena says, I think reflecting regularly is also very important. Who participates most? Who stays silent? Who feels represented here?
Mhm.
I think that's these
Yes.
um, reflection questions are also very relevant because in some
Mhm.
cases we need to find strategies so that everybody participates. That is not only those who are, faster with their hands up or whatever, that they all have the chance to participate, and also because in many cases it's true that those who remain silent. Uh, they have many things to say actually, but they don't say them because of a series of reasons. So
Mhm.
it's also important to consider this.
Mhm. Yes. There's another strategy how to address it. So to use AI for brainstorming, always clarify everything that can be clarified, because as Christina is saying, there can be so many reasons. So we can also ask, why might the students not raise their hand? Why might they not participate? So,
Mm.
mhm, mhm. Creative writing activities. Using all the resources, all the repertoires that we have, not only not only spoken expression, but also written expression, not only words, but also images, um, or music, or something that can that expresses what I want to say through any mode, through any media. Mhm. Varied output. Mhm. Or to say it to your hand instead of saying it to the class. Mhm. record instead of talking in front of the class.
Yeah, very, very nice ideas. And also, Philomena also asks, how can classmates support each other better?
Mhm.
So, some ideas,
Mm.
maybe, Lisa?
Well, it depends on what's the issue. Depends on the context. To support each other well, in the first place, what an ecological perspective teaches us is, in the first place, we need a kind of belonging and feeling accepted. And knowing that my opinion, my contribution is valid. So what I have done with students is to make them compare very on a very direct in a very direct way. Okay, now you what you just said, it seems to me that you're not valuing people speaking Russian in this classroom. But who is more valid as a person? Is a person speaking German or a person speaking Russian? And they already know, no, everybody has the same value. And so when you continue doing this, okay, whose opinion is more important, the teacher's opinions or the student's opinion, the opinion of an adult or the opinion of an adolescent? And so they come to learn that, okay, what I have to contribute is important, and I have the value, and I have everything that it needs to be here. And the teacher is showing me that everybody here has a place. And I think this is the basis that they have to get this feeling, and from there on, support can start.
Mhm.
Mhm, mhm. And of course, group work, teamwork.
Maybe we can now give the possibility to participants to
Mhm,
ask some questions that they may have about the contents of the webinar. So
mhm,
for that, I mean, I think it's a little bit more organized, if you don't mind, if you use the Q&A's box, or again, if you want to speak. So that everybody has the possibility of speaking and nobody remains silent.
mhm.
So I don't know, because it's quarter past 8, so I don't know if there's some questions that you may have. So, well, I mean, while waiting, okay, here we have you wrote UDL on a slide. What is that? Is Universal Design for Learning. So I can write it here.
Mhm.
Okay, well, Fran is also writing.
Mhm.
So maybe, Lisa, you can give a general overview, like
Mhm.
2 sentences about this.
Mhm. So the universal design of learning is the understanding that we have a diverse classroom. And within this classroom, I don't want to have students that have to say, I I'm hard of hearing, or I get distracted when there's too many things going on at the same time. I need structure. So we try to advance all these differences in learning and all these differences in personalities, and we try to create a universal design in which there are many options, so that everybody can find their own way of learning. And that we offer, for example, written, but also spoken and through an image mediated tasks or task instructions, and that they can be answered through different modes, and that it doesn't always have to be in the language of the classroom, but every language is allowed, and that there is room for digital translation. So it includes a lot of aspects, but the general idea is to have a design which is not only made for neurotypical or for the standard norm that we have, but for everybody.
So maybe one last question. Yeah, of course. I mean, references to URL will be found also in the modules. So, Brendan, if you're interested, please enter in the website of the LiTE Academy. If we can move to the following slides regarding the upcoming LiTE webinars. Well, this now the following well, these are the ones that we have had. Okay, so the following one is the 2nd of June, that is next week. Okay, in this case we will be talking about multilingual pedagogies in practice. So remember, same time than today. Okay, so you will receive the link as usual, and of course, if you know more people interested in joining, they can. Okay, and also on the 16th and the 29th of June, we will have these combinations that anticipated Lisa, combining the different approaches of the of the project of the LiTE Academy. The one on the 16th regarding assessment, and the one on the 29th on tasks. That I think that these are two key issues. And please also remember, if we go to the following slide, that if you're a member, I mean, if you're a PhD student of the doctoral program of Lenguas y Culturas, that is an inter-university doctoral program, okay, although we say here UCO is because we organized this webinar here at the UCO team. Remember that this one is the 11th of June. We will send you more information about this, okay, because as you know, this will be a collaborative webinar, okay, in which lots of people will have the possibility of, of participating, of speaking, and sharing their research in the areas of the LiTE Academy. I don't know if Vanessa has the hands up, so maybe she wants to speak. I'm going to give her permission to speak. So, Vanessa, if you want to say something, you can. Okay, no, sorry. Okay, so no problem. And please remember that, well, when we finish the session, you will see a survey, but in some cases there are problems. So I am pasting on the chat the survey about the webinar. So we would be very happy if you can give us your feedback. Okay, so this is the survey again, and I'm going to paste also in the chat the webpage of the LiTE Academy. So there you can join our waiting list, our newsletter, and find more information about the modules to enter the, the different modules there. So you can find them there. And as always, on the following days, you will have the recording of the session, okay? And we will send you the link for the following webinar. That is, remember, please, the 2nd of June. So thank you very much for your participation. It's always very nice when people, participate in the chat and they give, their solutions or their perspectives, and we can build, knowledge together. So thank you for all your efforts. Of course, thank you, Lisa and Rocío, for all your hard work. Rocío more with the theoretical part, and Lisa more with a practical insight of the modules. So thank you very much, and and see you next week. Okay, have a lovely evening.